Maestro, how do you define political art in Puerto Rico?
Well, what I'm doing is political art because I'm doing the portrait of a political prisoner. But then, in Puerto Rican art, all art is political because it deals with who we are, where we come from, where are we going. And in Puerto Rico, that is a political question. And art deals with meaning, with significance, with signs, like what I'm doing with this charcoal in hand on this paper. I'm doing a political sign because I'm doing a political prisoner of Puerto Rico in the United States jails. And that is a political statement. But then also, when you draw a palm tree, when you paint somebody walking down the street, when you refer to your desires or your fears, all of that has a political significance in Puerto Rican life. Therefore, all Puerto Rican art is political.
How has art shaped our historical identity both on the island and in the diaspora?
Well, all art kind of constructs an image, a feeling, a thought. Like, well, me, I always begin a portrait by the head and the hair. That comes easy to me, being bald. I always boldly begin with the hair, which is what I don't have. And it gives me a lot of pleasure giving somebody something that I don't have, but that I take symbolically from the subject. But political art in Puerto Rico has been the mainstay of our art and our life as a nation. You can go back as far as Campeche, where he did this court portrait of the governor, of the ladies in waiting to the governor's wife, of the little girls, and he would place a maraca down there somewhere, or maybe a pineapple. That would give it a touch that this was not just any court. It was not Madrid, it was not Naples, it was not Paris. It was Puerto Rico. And at that time, as it is now, defining where you are, who you are, what you're aiming at, it is quite important. Some people now say, oh, art in Puerto Rico doesn't deal anymore, doesn't have to deal with identity, we're beyond identity. Oh, I don't agree with that at all. Identity is always in the process of becoming and not becoming. Identity is change. Identity is as well origin as destiny. But more than anything, identity is becoming. And that never ends. And from the beginning, from Campeche, and even before that, if you go as back as the Taíno symbols, if you go back to the Africans coming to our country as slaves and working and preserving their rights and getting to their music, and all of it adds up to an identity that is always changing. And then you come here, like you come to Chicago, come right here where I am, Paseo Boricua. That's part of our identity. It's an ongoing process. It never ends, like this portrait.
Maestro, how effective has been the use of art as propaganda in Puerto Rico by both right and left?
Propaganda in Puerto Rico is always there. Like when I went to school, I used to get in the school textbooks, I would get the colonial propaganda. I read that George Washington never told a lie. I read that history in Puerto Rico began with the so-called discovery of the Spanish conquerors. and ended in 1898 with the, as they call it euphemistically, change of sovereignty. It's not an invasion, it wasn't a military takeover, it wasn't a war bounty from Spain to the United States, it was change of sovereignty. So it was this, the recounting of history according to them, and also visually, art-wise, the symbols of identity. Like, well, the Puerto Rican flag never was shown alone. It wasn't even shown at all. I learned about the of the Puerto Rican flag later on, because it was illegal. At the time I went to elementary school, it was illegal to have a Puerto Rican flag, let alone to show it. So I began seeing the Puerto Rican flag when it flew next to the flag of the United States. And it seemed natural to me, because I got used to it, till I really was beginning to form myself a conscience of what being a colonial person. And then one day I remember walking up the hill by San Cristobal Castle in old San Juan, and all of a sudden I saw these two flags on top of the fort, and I looked at the two flags that I had seen for most of my adolescence on, and I saw them. I said, what's that other flag doing there? I saw the stars and stripes, and I said, why is it there? I mean, this is our country. Why should we have that flag there? Well, art is always political, and visual art particularly is political. When I was a child, since I had seen all the greeting cards, and I seen movies and photographs, and everything had to do with white Christmas, I thought that in Puerto Rico we were very second or third class humanity, because we didn't have any snow. I mean, how could you have a Christmas snowless? Christmas had to be white, it couldn't be green. I mean, that was a poor man's Christmas. So I remember very distinctly in 1950 or 51, because it happened 2 or 3 times, Felisa Rincón de Gautier, the mayoress of San Juan, brought snow to Puerto Rico. And she did it by having some Puerto Rican migrants in New Hampshire shovel up snow and put it under the belly of a plane, a specially made capsule, so they could stand and come to Puerto Rico without melting before. So the plane landed in Isla Grande Airport. It was not Isla Verde Airport yet. Isla Grande Airport. It was a short ride from there to Parque Luis Muñoz Rivera. They drove it there, and I, along with hundreds of Puerto Rican children, would have the first snowball fight and last of our lives. Of course, the snow lasted maybe 5 minutes. I think it was less than that. We were all dressed in our best Sunday whites, and we all ended up muddy, all muddled up with because the snow, when it contacted the Puerto Rican earth, became mud. So we were all dirty. It was not a white Christmas at all. It was a brown Christmas. And we always had a green Christmas up to that time.
What's your earliest your memory of becoming familiar with the issue of Puerto Rican political prisoners, like the nationalists?
It was 1950, I believe, and I was in junior high school in Santurce. And I heard about the revolution, and the National Guard was out on the streets, and some people were talking about these crazy people. And then they smothered the revolution, and I heard about the prisoners. And I heard about the prisoners before those prisoners, all the nationalist prisoners, including, of course, Pedro Albizu Campo. And I was told they were all crazy, criminals, absolute people who were just out of their minds. So my first impression of the word patriotic was associated with the feeling that in order to be patriotic you have to be crazy. And it also dealt with fear, because it was the unknown, like madness was somewhere out there. So I remember distinctively how I came to regard these people as quite alien, but at the same time I began to be attracted to them. Why? How did they become alienated? What was so strong as to face jail and even death? And I started posing myself those questions as time went by. And of course then I went on to high school and to college, and I began meeting people who thought differently, who had ideals that were not available to me directly in my home, where my parents and all the people around me, all they really cared for was making a better living, which at the time was not that easy, because Puerto Rico were very poor. And then I began to learn not the facts of life, but the facts of a better life. The facts of an alternative life, the facts of really that you didn't have to be mad, you didn't have to be crazy in order to believe in another truth, in a better truth, in something that was more akin to principles and less to opportunity and convenience. And I began meeting people who were honest and brave, and who really thought it was worth risking liberty, freedom, in order to attain freedom. And well, things began to change, and I learned that Lolita was a beautiful name, that Pedro meant stone, the basis of something growing. I learned that the word Albizu was not something that you would shy away from, but that was somebody to admire. And it was a slow process, and I can't really say when it began. It just grew like a plant, as this drawing grows.
Maestro, speaking of passionately, when did you begin to connect the issue with yourself and Oscar Lopez Rivera so passionately, your support for his freedom?
Well, I knew about Oscar, who I'm right now trying to portray him from this photograph. At the same time, I knew about all the most recent Puerto Rican political prisoners. And of course by then I was well aware what it meant to be a Puerto Rican political prisoner, because it means a lot to me as a Puerto Rican artist and as a Puerto Rican. And that's said very easily, as a Puerto Rican artist and as a Puerto Rican. But it wasn't that easy becoming neither a Puerto Rican or a Puerto Rican artist. I was raised to be a good American, not a Puerto Rican. No, an American who was born in Puerto Rico, not a Puerto Rican, even though I had never lived in the United States. So my political conscience and knowing that people like Oscar Rivera, who by now is the longest prisoner, Puerto Rican political prisoner ever, I mean 31 years. And this man smiles. This man breathes and exudes kindness and spirituality. He's not at all embittered. Like sometimes when I get a line wrong, I just feel like throwing the charcoal on the floor and stamping on it. And this man has been in jail for 31 years. And he's become an artist there. He does beautiful work. And all his work, what they communicate is joy, is affirmation, is willingness to go on. There's no trace of hate or of bitterness, even against his captors. I think that's incredible. I admire him every day, more and more.
What's the role of the artist as a performer in a political context?
Well, the role of the artist as a performer in the political world is to behave just like any political person, but a little more so, because we have a privileged position. We have an audience. We have people who watch our work and listen to our words. So we have a higher responsibility than the other people. And that responsibility requires to act upon our beliefs and make ourselves heard and seen. And that's why I'm here. I mean, that's why any artist, writer, intellectual in Puerto Rico is behind Oscar Lopez liberation. It cannot be otherwise. It's, for us, it's like to breathe. It's no question that we have to do what we are doing, like he's done what he had to do. We're just answering him the way we can with our instruments, his actions and his whole life. That's what we do humbly, because really, just doing a piece of artwork, what is it compared to being 31 years in prison because of fighting for the liberty of your country and doing what you have to do? Well, we try to correspond in the way we can.
As artists and activists, Maestro, what would be the best way to practice, to get involved in a more conscious participatory practice? I'll repeat it.
No, I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you. How to get involved in a more participatory manner as artists and activists? Well, you said it. Artists and activists, through our art and through our actions. And sometimes, a lot of times they overlap, because art is action. And action, in many ways, is art. I mean, Oscar Lopez was an artist long before he became an artist. Long before he painted a picture. Through his acts, he was making art. One, in a way, is inseparable from the other. We act the way we think the way we act, and art is part of act and thought. Sometimes when I draw, when I paint, I think my hands think for me. They don't follow my brain. There's a connection, an invisible connection between what the eye sees and the hand draws. And I believe there's a reason behind words. Say draw. In English you say draw. To draw is not only to put a line, it's to draw from. You take. That's why some people are deadly afraid of being portrayed, because they think that when you draw them and you take something from them. And they're right. You take something from them, but you take from them the best of them, and at the same time throughout you give it back. So drawing is an act of freedom in itself.